Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
Pete, Films and Stuff
Welcome
live
back.
Saturday afternoon. Beautiful sunny day in London. How are you today?
I am great, Ethan. How are you?
Good. One of my favorite developments is the fact that Netflix is producing feature films that are available both in the cinema and streaming.
Yeah.
I kind of like that, I have to say.
Yeah, and I think the only reason they release them in cinema again is so that they can get awards consideration, because I think the Academy has and the Golden Globes have specific rules, like you have to be in the cinema at least for, I don't know, X number of days, or whatever the actual rules are. I don't know, but my understanding is that this became more and more of an issue 5 years ago or so when, Amazon and Netflix started actually putting out movies that were so good. And so they said, okay, well, you got to release them in the theaters before, otherwise we're not going to, nominate you.
Well, that is, I think, absolutely correct. But since today we are going to discuss The Gray Man, do you think there's any likelihood that this film will ever be nominated for an award, theatrical release or not?
No. The closest it'll get to is probably a Razzie, or maybe for like action sequence or like costuming. And
do you want to do a summary, and should we give our assessment up front, and then we'll talk about some of the pros and the cons?
So let's do a quick summary. A convict in Ryan Gosling is offered to be released from prison early in exchange for working for the CIA in effectively what is a pseudo-suicide squad role. Yep. And all those people are assigned numbers, and they basically become assassins for the CIA who are given targets. On one of his missions, we see him in Bangkok. The mission goes slightly awry, but he still finishes the mission as planned. But he finds out that he has to kill a fellow Sigma agent. He is given some information that the CIA wants. The CIA figures out that he's been given that information, so then they try to kill him, which is a very common trope. And then the CIA then starts using people in his personal life against him. And so he has to go on a one-man mission against the CIA to stop a family member or a close one to him from being murdered.
What did you rate this film?
So this movie is a solid mooch, or if you've got it, stream it.
I totally agree with you. I think this is a mooch. If it's a mooch, it is time well spent.
Exactly.
Definitely. I mean, for this Netflix film, we have something slightly different. There's no need to rush to the cinema to watch this. There's no need to subscribe
exactly.
to Netflix to watch this. But definitely it will be seen by a lot of people just because it is prominent on Netflix. So if you mooch it, go for it. You'll have something to talk about. I think it'll be widely seen just because of the prominence on Netflix, yeah?
It is, to date, supposedly Netflix's most expensive movie. Original movie. Supposedly, it actually surpasses Red Notice, which previously was Netflix's most expensive movie. It also happens to be starring Chris Evans and Ryan Gosling, two veritable hunky A-list stars. It also is directed by the Russo brothers, who I think most people will know primarily from their work in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of cultural, maybe not cultural cachet, but certainly Hollywood cachet attached with just those names.
What do you think of the casting? Ryan Gosling, Chris Evans, Ana de Armas, Billy Bob Thornton. What's Ryan your sense Gosling, of...
Everyone I thought was cast very well. I think Ryan Gosling has made a niche for himself as the very strong but silent type. in the sense that he's a very, very handsome, good-looking, almost like a pretty boy face. So it's hard, if you think of him that way, it's hard to see him as like an action star. But when you see him in movies like Drive, you can see it, right? He's this quiet, seething ball of rage that has the capacity for great violence. And you kind of see that in this movie as well. I didn't really like him with that goatee/beard thing. It didn't really suit his face. On the flip side, Chris Evans, who's like for the last 10 years as Captain America has been America's sweetheart because he's Captain America, plays the bad guy. And man, with his killer mustache,
I thought he was an excellent villain.
I think he plays a sociopath better than anyone else. And you saw hints of that in Knives Out, because he played a bad guy in Knives Out, and he was excellent in that as well.
I thought he was a great villain. The first thing I thought of, though, when I saw him with that mustache was Henry Cavill from the Mission Impossible.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Like very, very, I just saw the similarities, but I thought that Chris Evans played that role as well as any villainous psychopathic role could be played. I agree with you. Gosling is probably not my first choice for this role. I thought that would have been better with his Canadian counterpart, Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah.
Because, as you mentioned, he is definitely a strong silent type. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with him doing kind of the fighting scenes. He had this script that had him be so sarcastic and snarky. And I did not think that he pulls that off as well as Ryan Reynolds is the master, right?
But I'll tell you, the problem I think is with, and it's not a problem that way, but I think where it wouldn't have worked with Ryan Reynolds is Ryan Reynolds is also naturally comedic.
He's not the fighter. He's not the fighter that Gosling is, right?
And exactly. So on one hand, you have that, although obviously it's acting, he could do it.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, when Ryan Reynolds goes on like his sarcastic quips, they come off as funny and jokes, which wouldn't have fit the tone of this movie. This movie isn't about throwing funny quips and jokes, and certainly not from the good guy, the leading good guy. And there are no sidekicks in this movie that, you know, are required for that element. That's not what this movie is about. It would have been just as jarring, for example, of saying, I want a James Bond that's also making snarky, quippy jokes. He makes one-liners, but they're never like look at the camera, wink, funny jokes. You know what I mean? And that's what Ryan Reynolds excels at.
Yeah. What do you think of the storyline here? Are there any plot holes?
Super generic storyline, right?
Yeah.
CIA is the shadowy organization, which, I mean, duh.
Yeah.
They hire someone to go after one of their own.
Yeah.
He, you know, the assassin learns that he could potentially be double-crossed by his own organization.
Yeah.
He has to go back to his mentor, who was also obviously kicked out by the CIA. And then he has to save his mentor's family, who is now his de facto family. So it's the most cliched of tropes and stories there is. There was nothing in this movie that was new, with the potential exception of the fact that he was recruited as a guy from jail. Which, again, I say potential only because that's precisely what happens in the Suicide Squad as well.
I think that as a storyline, let me say the plot makes more sense than it did for Red Notice. Red Notice, there was a lot of
Oh, yeah.
Right? I thought this was better, and it is simpler. I do have a few issues, though, that I thought were cliched and just kind of like, let's call them emotional leaps. The first one is we see, Billy Bob Thornton working for the CIA, recruiting Ryan Gosling from a prison, right? And first, it didn't seem like the most hardcore, prison. Like, it didn't seem like this maximum security Rikers kind of psychopathic-filled prison, but I'll move past that. It wasn't clear that Ryan Gosling was really like this bad ultimate weapon that the CIA would want.
I agree.
We don't know this at the beginning, but during the movie, we find out he had one murder. He murdered his father. He murdered his father because his father was abusive towards his mother. It actually that's not the profile of he didn't create a plastic explosive kind of booby trap type of thing either. Like, it's not the profile that I think the CIA would have latched onto him, but like, haha, this guy would be perfect for our international clandestine assassin program, right? Like, he didn't really have like any language abilities, international travel, any like fighting skills, weapon skills, psychopathic personality traits, right?
Have you watched that Michael Keaton movie called American Made?
Yes.
That did a wonderful job of setting up who the CIA would want to recruit.
You know what? That is absolutely one of your best references ever. And I also have to say, to that Jonas brother, he did an exceptional job.
Phenomenal work.
Of selling exactly the emotion that leads someone to become that type of personality, right?
Exactly. Which Ryan Gosling did not have.
No.
For better or
that's
worse.
That's more of a writing issue. I don't think
Agreed.
But they should have given him something way, way better to work with. And I killed my dad because my dad was beating my mom. Like,
yeah. And I don't mean to belittle that concept, but
Yeah.
I mean, there must,
yeah,
relatively speaking, that's got to be like a dime a dozen in the U.S., right?
He could have been in the military. He could have been, like a vigilante. He could have been
my family was killed by a terrorist, or my dad was in the Twin Towers, or something that had a little bit more of a resonance as to why he would want to work for the CIA.
Yeah. Correct. So I think that would be my first, again, our job here is to nitpick. That's my first nitpick. My second nitpick is that we see kind of Billy Bob Thornton as the CIA recruiter who should be this dispassionate, cold guy, right? He's recruiting a guy essentially to be expendable, right?
Yep.
Saying, hey, you're a murderer. You're expendable. I'm giving you the opportunity to get out of jail. If you live, you die. We don't really care. That's why we're taking you. Yet somehow he uses this government resource for kind of his personal babysitting of not even his daughter, but his niece.
Yeah.
Not in the US, in Hong Kong. I felt like that's kind of like three steps. Like, one, why are you using a government resource? Two, it's not even your daughter. And three, why is your niece living in Hong Kong? Like, there's no real reason for that. Why couldn't she be in Virginia Beach or DC or, I don't know, Hong Kong just seemed random to me. And then apparently, even though we don't see it, but it's obviously because of that babysitting exercise, Billy Bob Thornton and Ryan Gosling become like very close mentor-type relationship.
Father-son relationship,
Father-son relationship that they're sharing secrets and phone calls. And when Gosling gets into problems after this, assassination kind of gone sideways and he gets this information, he feels comfortable calling Billy Bob, right? And confiding in him. That whole thing, to be honest, I felt was a little bit like, I don't know. But, I mean, it's part of the storyline, so we accept it. And then probably my third issue was, I'm not clear why Evans and my favorite, Jessica Henwick, who's Bugs in The Matrix, why they were operating out of what appears to be a British palace or
some
British
kind of castle in Moldova or whatever, wherever they were. Yeah.
I just wasn't clear why this was kind of their base. It seemed to be.
I can tell you why.
Tell me why.
Because that's what looks really good on screen.
Oh man, I was expecting you to give me some of that Pete insight that
I don't have any insight on this except for the fact that this is, I've got $250 million to spend on this movie.
Yeah.
Let's go to Moldova and get a castle.
Yeah. So, I mean, we talked a little bit. Yes, it's cliche to have the little girl kidnapped. It's a little bit cliche that, we've got, Gosling and Ana de Armas in this case can just like shoot or fight their way out of almost any situation.
That last sequence was so ridiculous where Ana de Armas literally with 3 rocket grenades and with a machine gun, with a sniper rifle, takes out more than half. In fact, I think she takes out 60 to 75% of Chris Evans' forces on her own who
are supposed to be extremely highly trained.
Yeah, these are guys who have drummed out of the CIA not because they're bad, but because they're too psychotic.
Yeah.
And she's able to take out 75% of them while a hobbled Ryan Gosling is able to take out the rest of them while taking care of Billy Bob Thornton and a kid.
That's always my it's not a pet peeve. It's a stretch, and it really has the risk of losing me when I'm like, I get it. I mean, first of all, again, when the guy was in jail, he wasn't like this military trained guy. But let's assume the CIA gave him like very, very good training. I get it. He's one of the top 1% operators in the world. I understand he could do like a job extremely well when he's in Bangkok and he's just got to kill one guy. I'm with you on this. When you're up against more than 3 people, 5 people, 7 people, 12 people, it just becomes a little bit like Fast and Furious unbelievable to me that one guy can do double tap headshots on the run when all the other bad guys have these dramatic semi-automatics and they're just flat outright missing him.
By a country mile.
Yeah.
So it gets a little absurd.
That's cinema, that's entertainment, that comes with the territory. But for me, my mom, I mean, this isn't a movie for my mom, and my mom's my measuring stick for a lot of movies. She would not have an issue with that, right? She may have an issue with the violence or the shooting, but she wouldn't have an issue with like the disparity of skills, where that's an issue that always kind of catches me. I love things where they use their brains or outthink people or evade, but when they just fight people head on and it's like clearly outnumbered and they're just so much more superior, that's something that drives me crazy.
It was fun. I don't like it, but I excuse it because that's a trope in Hollywood and that's fine.
Yeah.
It gets you from A to B. It's fine. Mm-hmm. What I didn't like, which seemed inconsistent, was Ana de Armas' character sees that the CIA, the organization she's working for as an agent, has betrayed them. And not just betrayed them, she's working for 2 traitors in Jessica Henwick and in Rege-Jean. Carmichael.
Great
and Bugs,
name, huh?
Right?
Yeah.
Great name. She knows she's working for traitors. She knows she's working for bad guys.
Yeah.
But she still does everything she can to go back to work for the CIA after. Like, what would have made more sense is that she breaks off with the CIA and becomes like a rogue agent with Ryan Gosling at this stage. But no, she goes in there and then she has that stupid confrontation where she's like, if you go after the girl, I will end your career. I was like, wait, why don't you end it now? I don't understand.
Yeah.
That didn't make sense to me, that she's like, I get it. You protect the CIA till the end of time because you believe in the CIA, fine. But after you've almost been murdered by the CIA, after you've seen that the CIA has been doing all these bad things, after you see the evidence, and not just a little bit, like she sees the hard drive filled with evidence, she still works for them. I was just like, okay, now this is a step beyond that logical thing.
What's your sense of, I mean, again, this is a movie, so it's not going to reflect reality, but let's just imagine that you're in Ana de Armas' shoes, right? You're already an assassin, right? I mean, let's not pretend you work for a charity and you're giving out, bags of food or something to like hurricane victims. You're already an assassin for hire. Most likely, before you were an assassin, that means you did something bad in your life to be put in this situation, right? You didn't just study biology in university and then go to be an assassin. If you followed the Ryan Gosling method, you were probably in jail for also doing something bad, right?
Or you were in the military and you were recruited for your skills in that.
Yes.
Exactly. So
but you're an assassin, right?
You're not, you're kind of born into the trade. You're not trained into it.
So do you find a problem that this is, again, the old trope. You find a hard drive, and the hard drive's got all these pictures and documents saying, hey, the CIA did all this bad stuff. Really?
Surprise.
First, you probably already know that. You probably did a lot of the bad stuff yourself. At what point do you get religion and say, you know what? I was comfortable just assassinating dictators. But wait a second. Now I found out we assassinated some people. I don't even know any of the details or the background or anything, but now I just assume that all these things were not justified. And you're a whistleblower? You walk away? It just seems like, unless there was like a file saying, hey, they intentionally killed all these 100% innocent people for no good reason or for something, they didn't take responsibility for it. It's really tough to get religion and turn self-righteous and say, well, that's not the CIA assassination program that I signed up for. Right?
Yeah. Look, the holes that we're going to poke in this and the holes that we have been poking into this, I think come down to Hollywood tropes.
Mm-hmm.
But if we look beyond that, so I found out before I saw the movie, I read in an interview rather, that this is based on a series of books and that there are 7 books, and theoretically that means that there are 7 movies.
Okay.
If there's one thing we know about the Russo brothers is they know how to make a franchise, right? They've done it in the MCU. They understand how to spearhead a franchise. And then there were also rumors that they wanted to do like a spin-off starring Ryan Gosling in his own movies. Also okay. So I think, and obviously the bad guys at the end of the day didn't get away, which then, do get away with it, which obviously leads to future sequels, right?
So so if you're looking at a future sequel, I mean, if you look at Fast and Furious franchise kind of as a model, is Gosling and Evans going to team up in the future?
Yeah, so I mean, that he's going to pop up in the future somewhere, somehow, right?
So they're going to send Gosling after him, right? They're going to release Gosling from jail and say, now you got
that's the thing is, I don't think so. I think Gosling is going to continue being a gray man, as in working outside the system.
Mm.
I don't think he's working for the CIA anymore. I think he becomes an independent agent. I think Gosling's contact within the agency is going to be Ana de Armas' character.
Oh.
And I think she's going to be feeding him information one way or another. Because I think we also saw at the end of the movie, he rescues the girl from her kidnapping. Right? Because the CIA did end up kidnapping her.
Mm-hmm.
So I think she's off the table in the sense of the CIA. What I do see, interestingly enough, is then him teaching her the tools of the trade. So she grows up to be... Oh, the
little girl?
Exactly. So that she grows up to be an assassin.
Oh.
Right? So then she becomes his father figure, mentor type. Yeah, I don't know.
Who is that?
Who knows?
Who is that little girl?
The one with the pacemaker.
Julie Butters. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Oh, she was the little girl in Once Upon a Time in Little Hollywood. There you go. Yep. In Hollywood, yeah. Okay.
Yep. That's some of the finest acting I've ever seen, right? So I agree there's going to be a sequel. I'm not so opposed to it, despite all the objections I raised. I'm not so opposed to it, but they can do better.
Of course they can, but that's not, as you know, but there are also, I have to say, there is also a place in this world for Hollywood popcorn thrillers.
Yeah.
And let's be very clear, this was a very good Hollywood popcorn thriller. Where you kind of walk into your, sit down on the sofa in front of your TV. You've got a bowl of freshly popped popcorn, and you kind of say, "Okay, brain, you switch off for the next 2 hours.
Yep.
I'm going to watch this movie. I'm going to watch Ryan Gosling and Chris Evans go to town on each other, and I'm going to be very happy at the end of it." And this does that very, very well. The action sequences, however unrealistic as they are, were all pretty good, right? Like that shootout sequence in the middle of Prague Square was ridiculous. They literally had World War III in that square, and Ryan Gosling is handcuffed to a bench.
Yeah.
I thought that was funny. Is like, how do you not shoot the where Chris Evans is literally shouting at the screen? How can you not shoot the one guy handcuffed to a bench? And they literally have men with rocket launchers, with miniguns, fighting against the small police force.
Yep.
I thought that was ridiculously over the top, and like you rightly said, something that you would expect out of a Fast and the Furious movie.
Yeah. The same thing with the tram. I thought that tram chase scene, that was very Fast and Furious inspired.
Absolutely.
And I mean, objectively, that was an exceptional scene. It was really good. It's got the tram, it's got fighting, it's got the car chase. That being said, you and I've watched so many movies, and you have as well, action movies, that I definitely give it the respect it deserves, but I was second screening the entire time. I'm like, okay, like they're going to punch each other out. They're going to fight the thing. It's going to flip or something. Like, I'm okay with it.
That's what I mean. So that's what I mean by, Hollywood popcorn.
It's a popcorn.
Which is to say that you're just there you're there effectively to see the visual effects and to see the action sequences, and everything in between you can kind of skip forward to and definitely not pay attention to, because it's not like you're watching Oscar quality writing in play here, right? Yeah. And with no disrespect to the writers, by the way, I mean, I think we can all agree that they're not hoping to win any writing awards for this movie. I think, their intention was to say, I have $200 million. How do I make sure that Netflix stays relevant with an action series that has the potential to be a franchise, a la Fast and the Furious? And that's fine. I think they're happy with that.
I was a little bit disappointed with the Ana de Armas character, though.
I thought she was the weakest link of all of them. I like Ana de Armas. I thought she's obviously a very capable actor, and more importantly, in this movie, a very physically capable character. Yeah. But for me, probably not necessary.
Yeah. I mean, she should not have been such a supporting actor in this. Like she should have been.
If she was just in that Bangkok sequence as her handler and that's it, you could have then introduced her or implemented her better in other movies going forward in the future films. Yeah. But she became relatively integral to the story, and none of that made sense. And that's when you start thinking, wait, why is she doing the thing she's doing? Because none of that makes sense. Why is she going back to work for an organization that she knows she shouldn't be in?
Yeah. I mean, I like the idea that of her teaming up with Gosling, I think is a good team, but I think it's more effective when you have contrasting qualities. One is the brawler, right? Gosling is the puncher, right?
Yeah.
She should be the surgical,
thinker.
The thinker, like
the strategist,
surgical demolition, the computer expert,
What would have been great is if, because, Chris Evans kind of realized that he's like, oh, this is a feint. They're creating a distraction. What would have been great is if it was Ryan Gosling who was the one who was actually creating the distraction. Yeah. Because we've seen him all movie being the guy who's the expert with the weapons and with the fighting. And he's blowing everyone up. And he's not wearing a mask or anything, so everyone can see that's him. Mm-hmm. And then you realize that he's doing all that so that he can send Ana de Armas to get the two of them out.
Yeah.
Versus the other way around, which is even Chris Evans' character was like, this is obviously a distraction.
Yeah. You know what for me, the model for this is way back when, Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Where Brad Pitt, you saw like that one scene where they're still married or together, and they both got the same hit on the one guy, right?
Yep.
And Brad Pitt goes out there, with like a dune buggy and a rocket launcher, right? And she's out there with like a sniper rifle.
Her 6 assassins. And
and she's like, all in camouflage. Like you saw the difference between like kind of the masculine male, like I'm just going to explode it. And the feminine, like, hey, like, let's work smarter,
be a
not
little
harder.
More surgical about this. Yeah.
And I love that way that they kind of played that off. And I think that would be a really good pairing if you could do that between Ana de Armas and Ryan Gosling. Gosling's like, hey, I'll just like punch through everybody, right?
Yeah.
Robert Pattinson in Batman, right? And she's like, hold on, like you're never going to make it through that many guys. Let's do it like this instead, right? And
you need that dichotomy, right? Where you see the guy who's like, well, how do I get over this wall? I know. I'm going to scramble over it. And Ana de Armas is just like, oh, the's a door right here. You can just literally walk through, right?
Exactly.
And then you see him struggle over. Comedy.
Oh, you're getting that. You're getting that from your
unbearable weight.
I'm not gonna make it. I'm not gonna make it.
Yeah, but that's exactly what I mean. And you don't have to play that up for comedy, although it naturally allows you to, which is great. But it also very clearly and very effectively demonstrates thinking styles, right?
Yeah.
And thought processes.
Yeah.
And in this case, both of them kind of play the CIA brawler. I'm not saying that they were both punching their way in, but in the sense that their skill sets were mostly broadly aligned with each other.
Yeah.
Whereas, if she were like the handler, or if he were the handler, where he's like, okay, listen, you can decide to go in there with a rock, because she's at one point she's like, no, I want the rocket launcher.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was like, that's fine. All I need is my Glock. Or you know what I mean? Like, something like that. But in this case, they were both that type.
There's an opportunity maybe for that movie to be made with the opposite roles, right? Because Ana de Armas, whenever they cast her, she's always going to be the surgical one. She's never going to be the brawler, right? If you would switch that and have like Ronda Rousey or like Gina, the other one, right?
Yeah. Like
that could be, and then you'd have someone like Kevin Hart. Yeah. If you just want to like use the size differential, that would be a more also like a good pairing, right? Where it's like, hey, wait a second. Like you're the one who's going in and punching everybody. You're the one who's, saving me and.
Yeah. And it, again, it naturally allows you then to say, hey, do I want this to be slightly more comedic? Do I want this to be more serious? Do I want this to be a flat out comedy? It gives you a little bit of options. Yeah. In this one, not so much. In this one, you're kind of like, okay, well, I'm the strong silent type with the rocket launcher. Oh, I'm the strong silent type with the rocket launcher, but I'm a female. Okay, we don't really have much more, options for thinking laterally and stuff.
Yeah. I'm sad that Billy Bob Thornton is dead. I'm happy Chris Evans is alive.
They can always reintroduce him in flashbacks.
Yeah.
Of his training. In these kinds of movies, especially when we're talking, because there was such a massive jump, it was like an 18-year jump from when he was in jail to out of jail. In the future movies, you can always see things where he's just like, oh, and then he thinks about, like he's taking a nap and he thinks of his time training, or he's training his niece to become an assassin, and he thinks back to his time of training under Billy Bob Thornton. He's dead in terms of the show in the character, but like you can always have him come back in flashbacks.
So what do you think the sequel looks like? It's Gosling chasing down Evans. It's those two working independently going after the same target.
I think the clash remains between the two of them. Yeah. I think they go in for the rematch, but I think the greater plot line is Gosling going after the CIA.
After Carmichael.
And Carmichael.
I love Bugs. I thought Bugs and Carmichael were very, very good. I would say Carmichael, that's when he read that script, he should have been like, wow, that's a great role for me. I love it. Bugs, I felt that role just kind of like, again, diminished her a little bit. She was just towards the end off to the side saying, enough is enough. When is it enough?
She was sniveling. She was a liar. She plays like a two-faced character.
Yeah.
It comes off as very manipulative in a wrong way. And again, cognitive dissonance for me. I really liked Bugs. And more importantly, like I like Jessica Henwick. Like I've liked her since Daredevil on Netflix like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
She played, and I think she's phenomenal. And I really like her. And so she's always been a good guy.
Yeah.
So to see her play this bad guy was just difficult to accept. I didn't like it, but I also acknowledged she's still very good.
Yeah. I wish they would have, I think that they should have switched Carmichael and Bugs and have Bugs be.
So that would have been a good trope
right?
too. I mean, yeah.
But because Carmichael had this little bit of like Ivy League insecurity to him, right? Like he was so arrogant
from Harvard.
Yeah, like who watches Harvard football game? Like he would have been a better sidekick to Bugs and have Bugs be like the CIA station chief. We've seen we've seen the strong woman hard ass, right?
And he could have been the sniveling guy.
Yeah, and he would have been more. Yeah, he would have been more better as the kind of like the Ivy League know-it-all. But then kind of like doesn't want to get his hands dirty and kind of worried about like, do we have approval for this?
The great twist, which I'm sure will be coming, is that she will use that to her advantage and she will try to sink Carmichael so that she can become the head of the program.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, and I know this is going to come up in the sequels, they always refer to the old man. But we don't know who the old man is because remember they were referring to someone helping him up the ranks.
Yeah.
And we never met him.
Maybe it's the same old man as in the show The Old Man.
The Old Man, yeah. What a great crossover that would be.
What a crazy crossover, yeah.
Jeff Bridges shows up. But no, in any case, my feeling is the Gray Man.
Definitely worth a mooch. Definitely worth a mooch. And if you already have Netflix, you should definitely watch it. Listeners, thank you. Please email Pete or myself with your feedback, ideas.
Aloha at filmsandstuffpodcast.com.
Aloha. Okay.
All right.
Pete, listeners, thank you so much for your time. We catch you next episode.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.